welcome to Self-Made and Sober. I'm your host, Andrew Lasise with selfmade-coaching.com. And in this podcast, it's my job to interview people who are not only crushing it in business, but have also struggled with addiction in the past and are in long-term recovery. Be sure to join our Facebook group where we help entrepreneurs grow and scale their business at facebook.com/groups/SMC Mastermind, like Self-Made Coaching Mastermind. I hope you enjoy the show, and be sure to subscribe and rate the show afterwards so you can get notified each Friday when we put out a new episode. And with me today is Kate B., the founder of Sober School, where she teaches women through early sobriety, and she helps them navigate alcohol-free living, but she does it in a way that makes women not feel deprived or miserable, which I know for myself was something that I was very, very concerned with in early sobriety. So, Kate, how are you doing?
I'm good, thank you. Thank you so much for having me on.
Yeah, definitely. And so you've been sober since April 6, 2013. So I've got like a week or 2 weeks on you. 2013 was a good year. Yeah, March 23rd was the day that changed it for me in 2013. So coming up on, or a little past halfway through year 6, how's it treating you?
Yeah, pretty good actually. I can't believe how long it's been really, because I stopped on April the 6th, exactly 6 months before my 30th birthday. So I have these kind of like 2 points of the year: the 6th of April, my sober birthday, and then the 6th of October, my real birthday. So yeah, it's kind of nice. So it's good opportunities to reflect on how quickly time passes and how old I'm getting.
Well, I mean, age is just it's just a number, right? It's all how you feel.
Thanks.
That's what we tell ourselves. So why don't you take us through what's going on early 2013 and what's going on in your life, what's going on through your head? Like, why'd you decide to start getting sober?
Yeah. Well, I mean, looking back at that time, I think from the outside, everything looked fine. And that was one of my big problems, actually, that I didn't seem to have an alcohol problem as I, as you might stereotypically think that people did. You know, I was holding down a good job. I had a busy social life, lots of friends. Like in many ways, I was living this really successful life. And I think if you'd asked any of my friends what they thought about my drinking, they'd have said, oh, well, yeah, like Kate really likes to drink, but doesn't everybody? And yeah, I had this big secret, which was all the drinking that I was doing at home on my own. And that had become my absolute favorite way to drink. And, 2 or 3 times a week, I would need to have this kind of drinking binge where I would just drink completely on my own until I passed out. And this had been going on for several years, and I'd had some attempts at stopping drinking in the past, sworn off it for a month or more, sometimes successful, sometimes not. But I think what really made the difference in April of that year was I just had this feeling since the very beginning of the year that my foot was really on the accelerator, and I seemed to be drinking more and more and more. And I was kind of scaring myself, really. And, I'd looked around for help and I couldn't find anything that seemed to really speak to me. I'd been to a few AA meetings, and they'd left me feeling more convinced that I didn't have a problem. I'd heard these really dramatic stories there, and had managed to convince myself that, oh, I'm so different from all of them. And I didn't need to go to rehab. I knew that. My doctor wasn't any help, just suggested I drink a bit less, which was devastatingly useless piece of advice. And
it's
eventually
funny, normal people and how normal people think that, you know what? Yeah. A good solution to your drinking problem would be if you just drank less. That's a real option. Oh, just drink less. That's how I should stop drinking. Just do less. It's like telling someone
Oh,
with a
thank
peanut
you.
allergy, you should just, you should breathe when you eat peanuts. Like just ignore, the symptoms in your throat getting closed. I just breathe when I eat peanuts. I don't have a problem. It's, sorry for cutting you off, but I
Yeah.
just think that's the greatest piece of advice. Just stop. It's easy.
Oh, just. Uh, to be honest, I can see where he's coming from because when you look at a lot of literature, certainly in the UK anyway, about drinking less, it is generally the main message is just drink less, as if it's that simple. But I think what really made the difference in April of that year was I must have Googled something slightly different, and I found this blog. It's called Unpickled, and that was the first time I'd really discovered someone who sounded like me and who'd stopped drinking and who seemed so much happier. And I think it's really powerful when you see your story reflected in someone else. And that was the first time I thought, okay, this is like evidence that someone else, who was drinking like me, felt that they should quit and maybe I should try it again. So, yeah.
So you could kind of relate when you were reading that blog to, this person's story kind of sounds like mine. And I know that's kind of like the foundation in 12-step recovery. Maybe, it's not everybody's brand, but the idea of, yeah, I understand what you're talking about. And, Kate, you and I practically just met, but I can relate to your story, the doctor told me, well, just cut back. And to most people they would think that's okay, whatever. But being on the same side of it, I remember one time the doctor had asked me, my levels, something was off, and he said, well, how often do you drink? And I said, about 6 to 8 times per year, or I'm sorry, 6 to 8 times per week. He said, 8? And I was like, well, yeah, because football's on Sunday. So I'll wake up early, I'll get wasted, I'll pass out, and then I'll wake up, and then I'll get drunk again on Sunday. So sometimes I'll get 7 days and twice on Sunday. He was like, wow, maybe you should cut back. And I was like, what do you think's like a good number to shoot for? Like 6?
No.
So early
Yeah.
sobriety, what's that look like for you? Is it a struggle or were you just done?
Um, well, it was, um, yeah, it was kind of a really up and down time. The main thing I did different this time was I started writing a blog myself, just at one of those free WordPress anonymous blogs. It's still out there, I think. It's called The Sober Journalist. And I started writing it just to try and make sense of my own thoughts, keep myself accountable. And by doing that, I accidentally created a bit of a community for myself because I started following other bloggers, they followed me. Then someone said to me, hey, a group of us are doing this 100-day challenge where, we're just going to try and like not drink for 100 days. And I thought, oh, yeah, well, that sounds a lot less intimidating than, stopping forever, which is what I thought I was having to sign up for. And so yeah, I'm not going to say it was easy, but it was so different from all the other times when I've been completely on my own and not reaching out for help and not knowing where to turn for it.
So going through this 100-day challenge, you were already sober before this had happened. Is that correct? Or was this the start of it?
I think I was probably only a couple of days sober, and then I found out that these other people were doing these 100 days. So it coincided almost perfectly. Um, and they were kind of sharing lots of stuff like book ideas, things to do with your free time, all that kind of stuff. So it didn't feel as if I was so alone.
Yeah, that part of the community, I think that's really cool how you accidentally created a community, which is what so many people are trying to fabricate a community. What do you think were some of the reasons why that community started building?
Um, I think back then, especially, there was this sense of um, no one really gets this. Like no one else drinks the way that we do. And now I know that that's not true. There are hundreds and thousands of people who feel exactly the same way about alcohol. But it was as if I'd stumbled across this corner of the internet where we all felt as if we were stuck in this gray zone of problem drinking. So we weren't normal drinkers, but we weren't the cliched rock bottom. And then I woke up in hospital and I'd been arrested and I'd lost everything type of drinker. That just wasn't me. And thank goodness things never got that bad for me. But in a way, that was a big part of the problem, that things weren't bad enough. And I needed someone to kind of help me reframe that and start thinking about whether things were good enough to keep continuing as they were, and they weren't. Um, so yeah, that was a really big mindset shift for me, realizing that I didn't have to wait until things got worse, and that until I'd sort of qualified as a, oh yes, you need to stop drinking. Like there wasn't some test you have to pass. You can just stop when you want to.
Well, they do have tests out there, and they're pretty low answers as far as I remember one of them. After I had gotten a DUI, which I do not recommend ever getting, but I had to go to alcohol school and they gave us like a checklist of, maybe you're a problem drinker. And it's like, do you black out when you drink? And it's just like, what do you mean, do I black out? Like on Monday? Like what? I don't understand this question. Do I black out when I drink? Like that's the same as asking, do you drink? They go hand in hand. And do you
Yeah.
drink more than 5 when you drink? And it was like, is it a problem if I do? Or is it the problem if I don't? Because if I just drink one, then what's the point? And I came to find
Yes.
out that's not normal for most people. That actually that's something wrong inside of me. So your 100 days finishes. What's going through your mind now? Is it rah rah like let's get 101? What's going on?
I think earlier than 100 days, probably around 70, 80 days in, I realized that I was going to continue this. And I then started to think, okay, well, maybe I continue this for 6 months, and that would like take me up to my birthday. I think that would be a good thing to do. And in those early stages, I was really lucky. I experienced all the benefits of early sobriety, from like sleeping a lot better, losing a bit of weight, just feeling a lot more positive, and I'd kind of lost that anxiety that comes with being hungover so often. So I was feeling like really amazing, and that motivated me to continue for a bit longer. And then when I got to the 6 month mark, it was kind of like, oh well, maybe I'll do this for a year. And that is honestly how I kept moving forward for quite a long time. And I like that, because as soon as I started thinking too far ahead, that really freaked me out. But moving forward in those kind of manageable chunks, or okay, let's do this till Christmas, and that kind of stuff, that is what got me to a point where actually I didn't need to ask that question anymore. This just was what I wanted to do, and it was making me feel so much better.
It's interesting how when things make you feel better, you continue to do it. And that's kind of what we did with the drinking, right? I know for myself, it was my life sucks. My life sucks. It's okay when I drink. And then my life sucks. My life sucks. And then I get sober. And then it's like, oh, your life actually doesn't suck. And then and it's kind of like what I was going from like a 2 out of 10 up to a 4 out of 10. And now I wake up at an 8 once I've taken all of that out of, but you're in this cycle and your brain tells you this is what you're supposed to do. So your strategy, at least at first, was breaking it down into small chunks. Let's just get a couple weeks, let's get a couple months. And are you still deploying that today, or is it more just of who you are as a person and just kind of your default is sober?
Yeah, I don't even think about it now. I don't want to go back to those days. There's really nothing motivating me at all to drink anymore. I feel as if I would lose everything that I've worked so hard to gain, really. Um, but just to going back to your point about getting started is that when I look back, I think the cycle I got stuck into is that I would start on a Monday with, right, this is when I'm going to stop drinking. And, make it till like Tuesday or Wednesday or whatever. If I was being really good, maybe till Thursday, Friday. But then I couldn't get my head around the idea of how was I going to go out the weekend without drinking, or how was I going to unwind. So then I drink again, and then it was like, okay, so the cycle would start over on a Monday. And what I was never doing was really giving myself the chance to do some of those awkward as hell things, such as the first time you do go out without drinking, or the first time you go to a party or a really stressful family meal and you don't drink. I wasn't ever giving myself the chance to do that. And yet somehow when you say, okay, I'm going to stop for 100 days or whatever that short-term goal is, you know that during that time, some of that stuff is going to crop up. So it's a chance to prove to yourself that actually you can do it. And it might not be quite as awful as you think it is.
So, do you have any strategies for getting over that fear mindset? Because that can happen in sobriety as well as, I mean, anything in life, especially, with the focus on this show and entrepreneurship. Like, we get in our own way. Do you have any ways of getting over those fears?
I think the biggest thing I've learned is just to do it, because
Yes.
I'm a real procrastinator, and I can think and think and think myself into a hole. And yet, if you just do it, that's the only way you're going to have the evidence to know what it's like. And the other thing I would recommend is to do something 2 or 3 times. The first time I did go out with my friends not drinking, I did feel awkward. And I felt as if I spent the whole night thinking about how I was the only one that wasn't drinking and what did they think of me and all this kind of like chatter in my head. And I realize now that that's because that's totally normal. I was breaking a pattern. I was doing something different. It would have been almost weird if it wasn't weird. So, and then the second time I did it, oh, it was a bit easier because I knew I could do it. And then the third time, and then as time goes on, people stop even remarking on the fact that you're not drinking, and you start to have insights such as, hey, if I find these people boring, maybe I shouldn't be friends with them. Or, if these people have a problem with me not drinking, maybe we haven't got quite the friendship I thought we had. And all those kind of things that I think you just can't really see when you're stuck in the middle of the forest looking for a way out.
Yeah, and we have this tendency to forget that life is always changing and the people in your life are going to be completely different even a month from now, a year from now. I mean, I look at our wedding list and we had like about 110 people, and there are people on there that I haven't spoken to since. And we had to pay
Wow.
per seat, and it's looking at it and it was like, these people are the people that made the cut that got to the wedding. And like, if we got married today, it's like a half of them we wouldn't have
Yeah.
even kept around. And we were sober at our wedding. Like, these were friends we had in sobriety, but things are always changing. Our lives are always moving forward. And if we just stay still in the same patterns, yes, it's familiar, but we're missing out on so much growth. And so
Yeah.
I want to shift gears a bit and talk about your entrepreneurship journey with Sober School. What was the thought process in getting that started?
Yeah, so I think about 6 months into my sobriety, I realized that one of the things I'd been drinking over a lot was my job, and that I wasn't very happy at work. And this was a really big deal for me because ever since I'd been a kid, I'd wanted to be a journalist. And I'd ended up getting quite a good job working on BBC Breakfast, which is kind of our equivalent of Good Morning America, I think. Um, but so I was kind of behind the scenes, booking guests, like working on breaking stories, and I felt as if I should be having the time of my life. This should have been the pinnacle of my career, but actually I felt a bit stuck and a bit bored. So I started looking around for things to do and I couldn't find anything. So I took this career coaching course. And I remember it was a really like different kind of career coaching, and they got us doing all kinds of weird things. And at one time, this woman said, you know, you could start a business if you wanted to. Just think about what are the kind of things you like blogging about. And I hadn't told anyone at this point about this secret anonymous blog I had. And I remember thinking, what? I write this blog about how I'm sober. There is no way I'm ever going to turn that into a business. Ugh, what a stupid idea. Anyway, it did plant some kind of seed in my head. And part of me did think, actually, I'm really enjoying this career coaching course because there's some lessons I have to do and some like, you know, things to work through. But I'm also part of this community and it's all done online. So it's really convenient. And I thought then, hey, like, it would have been so cool if there was something like this for when I was trying to stop drinking. But it was about 2 years before I thought, oh, maybe I could be that person who sets this thing up. And it was just a lucky quirk of fate. Like things just came together. I found out about a funding program for social entrepreneurs, and I managed to win a £5,000 grant, which I think is about $6,000. They, you know, they liked my idea for the sober school, and they wanted to cover my startup costs and a bit more. And and that's kind of how I got started, really. And that grant was a massive deal because having got the money, I then had to actually follow through on this crazy idea that I'd had. And I had someone checking on me that I was doing the work and I was spending it on the right things. And I had to show them what I'd done. So, yeah, it kind of came out of a mixture of my unhappiness in my job combined with a feeling that I had been looking for help and looking for something that didn't exist. And I was, you know, as soon as it wasn't there, I was going to create something to help fill that gap.
So tell me about the first client that you got in sober school.
I think her name was Mary. She was one of five, actually. I'd been blogging for a while over on the sober school and building up a bit of an email list and a following. And I decided I needed to. I got the kind of basic structure of the course in my mind, but I needed to build it. And I wanted to check before I did that someone actually wanted to do this. So I emailed personally, like individually, about 50 different people. And I can't remember how much I asked them to pay at that time. I think it was a fairly token amount. It was like $40, $50, something like that. And I said, you know, you're going to be part of this really small group of people, and I'll like take you through this course as I build it. It'll be a bit rough and ready, but you'll get loads of help and support from me. And yeah, these five people signed up, and and yeah, I managed to get this thing done. But actually, it was a bit of a kind of scrambled experience, that first one. And some of those clients ended up coming back and joining the course again when it was done properly, because I realized that one of the things that makes my course much more successful now is that lots of people will take it at the same time. And these five people were a little bit lost altogether in this very small tribe. So yeah, it was really it was really nerve-wracking for me because I just felt so responsible for them. And yeah, it was crazy.
And what did the transition look like in your life? Did you quit the job before you took on sober school? What was happening in your life at those times?
Yeah, no, I reduced my hours in my job. They let me do that. Um, I also completely randomly took on another job, which I still have, and I'm about to leave in a few months' time. But it was a very part-time job in advertising, and so that allowed me to cut down, be working fewer hours, but still making enough to cover the bills. And then the sober school was what I was doing in evenings and weekends and any free time I had during the week.
So, what are some of the lessons that you've learned? You mentioned about having a larger community. Is there anything else that you would have done differently on that beta group now that you've been through it and have learned some of the ropes?
Yeah, I think I've got better at teaching because I knew the information that I wanted to convey. And what I had to realize was that the kind of people I was attracting to my course weren't quite the kind of people I'd imagined. I thought I would have lots of people in their late 20s who were just like me signing up. But actually, my typical client is in her early 40s and she's got kids and she's married, and her life is a bit different to mine. It's a bit more stressful and busy. And so I realized that I needed to start addressing some of that, and the fact that some of the things I'd done that had completely saved my sobriety, such as I used to go to the gym after work to try and kill a few hours. These ladies maybe aren't in a position to do that because they've got childcare commitments and all the rest of it. So I had to think a lot more creatively about the strategies we could put in place to help them during that time. So I think it's a combination of getting better at teaching, and also you learn more from working with more people and seeing the kind of patterns that they go through. Um, yeah.
That's really cool that you identified though and recognized this is what my tribe is asking for. This is who my tribe is. And she may not look like me, but at the same time, I need to make sure that she is getting value from what I'm offering. And I ran into that myself with my IT company. I was 27 years old, and a lot of our clients, 60 and older, didn't grow up with technology. So they would come to me with a problem, and I would say, "Oh, it's great. It's easy. Just use this different software, da, 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 and it's super intuitive. Bye. See you later." And then they come back the next day and they're like, "I don't know anything about computers. That's why I hired you. Like, you just solved my problem with a new problem." And so we had to get better at kind of slowing down and fitting the solution within their framework, because a solution for me would be try a new software, learn a new software, start from scratch. But when that's not your forte, my audience was telling me this is not the solution that works for me, even though it works for me personally. And in my head, I'm like, well, just do what I do. But, we
Yeah.
don't all have the same experience, and we attract different people from different walks of life. So I think that's great.
Absolutely. Yeah. And really interestingly, in the last, I'd say 2 years, I've noticed a second type of avatar coming along, if you want to use that word, a second kind of client. And this is a woman in her mid 60s who's retired from her job, and she's drunk really heavily throughout her career. And she thought that when she quit work, she would cut down as well, and that would fix things, but it hasn't actually. And now she's realizing that she's got a lot of time on her hands and a reasonable amount of money to fund this all, and that's a real problem. And when I started realizing that I was getting quite a bulk of older women in the class, it really freaked me out because my mum's about that age. And I can't imagine telling my mum to do anything and her actually listening to my advice. Um, but amazingly, these people do. So, yeah, I kind of had to get over that.
Yeah, maybe looking at it from a different perspective and not, well, this is my mom, but this is somebody who, you have the solution to a problem that they're experiencing, and you're just an authority in the field. And it's just coincidence that they happen to be someone who you don't think you'd have any any control over or any sort of impact on how your mom would do it. But, these women are seeking your advice. So it's a lot easier to give advice and to help people through things, to coach them when they are actively seeking it, as opposed to someone that's just, well,
Yeah.
Kate, I used to change your diapers. So anything that you tell me doesn't doesn't fly.
Doesn't fly, yeah.
Yeah. Are there any books that are kind of your go-to, one or two, that you recommend for people who are trying to get better in their life, entrepreneurship, sobriety? What's your one or two most recommended?
Yeah. So for sobriety, a book I always recommend is Alan Carr's Easy Way to Control Alcohol. I don't know if you've read that book.
No, I'm not
Um,
familiar with that, but we'll have it in the notes.
yeah, it's so one of the things I missed out earlier, which I should have said, is that something that helped me to stop drinking was I bought this book, but I only half read it. But in England, there are some Alan Carr seminars, and his system has helped a lot of people through these clinics and workshops stop smoking and stop drinking. And I went along to one of these workshops where they break down all the reasons why you drink and what you think you're getting out of it. And they really analyze what's going on there. So, is alcohol really helping you unwind? Is it really making you the life and soul of the party? So you kind of break down all this stuff. And that was so influential on me. I didn't feel the book was the whole solution. It kind of glosses over a lot of the challenges that you can face when you're surrounded by people who are romanticizing and glamorizing and normalizing this drug. Um, so, that's kind of something I would love to see change within the book, and certainly what I cover in my program. But that book was definitely the foundation for me of my sobriety, and I recommend it to everybody.
That's incredible.
Yeah, yeah, I love that. And in terms of entrepreneurship, I recently read Grant Cardone's book, The 10X Rule. I don't know if you read that.
Yeah, that was
Um,
one of my first audibles a couple of years ago.
yeah, I listened to it as an Audible book as well. And once I kind of got over how shouty and sort of passionate and aggressive he is,
Yeah, he is definitely a character.
he's a character. I realized that he had some really good things to say. And one of the takeaway messages for me was about most of us we're scared to set big goals because we're worried about how we'll feel if we fail at them. But if we don't set big goals, all we achieve is a really average life. And if you're already, a little bit unhappy if you're thinking about setting goals, and the thought of an average life probably makes most people feel a bit disappointed. So why not like play a bigger game and just kind of shoot for the moon? Perhaps you'll just be happy with what you reach in the process. There were lots of little gems in there that made me think, oh yeah, okay, yeah, this changes how I feel.
Yeah, when I went through it, I remember one of the things he says. He says something to the effect. It's been a couple years since I went through. It was something to the effect of, like, don't under promise and over deliver. He says nobody wants to go see a play. It's like, there's a bunch of mediocre actors here. You say they are the best actors in the world and this is the best show ever, and then you perform and you give the people the best show ever. So my takeaway was, if you're the best, be the best. He was saying, if your competitors are sending out one email a day, send out 10 emails a day. And I've been on that guy's email list. He practices what he preaches. It's a little absurd how heavy he goes on marketing. But Kate, it's
Yeah.
been wonderful having you on the show. Where can people find out more, connect with you, and get to the sober school?
Thank you. Well, thanks for having me on. The best place to come and find me is over at thesoberschool.com. I have a blog, which I try and do nearly every week. So that's got loads of tips and help and advice in. And there's also more details about me over on there. And I'm on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter, all at the Sober School as well.
All at the Sober School. All right. Well, we'll have links in the show notes. And Kate, thank you so much for being on Self-Made and Sober. Guys, if you enjoyed the episode, give us a review on iTunes. Reach out on Facebook on facebook.com/selfmadesober or on Instagram at selfmadesober. And Kate, have a great day. Thanks so much for being on the show.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for listening to Self-Made and Sober. Be sure to join our Facebook group at facebook.com/groups/SMC Mastermind, like Self-Made Coaching Mastermind. I hope you enjoyed the show, and be sure to subscribe and rate the show so you can get notified each Friday when we put out a new episode.